Good afternoon again, everyone. This is Ian here with UDA Technologies. We are ready, I believe, to go ahead and get started with our webinar today covering OnPlan scheduling here in ConstructionSuite. This is going to be, of course, the fourth in our series of webinars this week. This is covering the scheduling aspects and a lot of the calendar and to-do utilities available through ConstructionSuite. Our goal today is to actually map out a lot of these projects that we've talked about and built over the past few webinars. And there's going to be a lot of components involved in this. So at this point, let's actually shift over to ConstructionSuite as well. Let's close this slideshow. And in the main interface for ConstructionSuite, what we're taking a look at here is the dashboard, again, for ConstructionSuite. And on the summary page, you'll actually get a little bit of an idea of what kind of activity we've been creating in ConstructionSuite, primarily with the recent projects that we've been working on, recent contacts, files. But today, of course, focus is going to be here on recent activities and the to-dos. Now, as we previously mentioned, of course, there's a lot of information that's going to be going into making these projects successful here in ConstructionSuite. We've got a lot of detail down here in the contacts list that's going to apply. This information that we're looking at here in the contacts list is, or all the contacts rather, these are coming from all sorts of aspects of the company itself. These are going to be subcontractors that we're working with. They're going to be vendors or suppliers, perhaps, that we need to pull in on our jobs. This is going to include a lot of clients, of course, and potential clients, vendors, suppliers, architects, engineers, everybody that we need to work with. And I've actually gone through and grouped them all so that I can navigate through this list a little bit easier. If we need an electrician, I can grab the electrical guys. If I need a new roofer, I can come over here and pick one of my two, and so on and so forth. So organizing these is definitely going to be a useful tool, especially when we start making sure that we've assigned the right people to our tasks in the schedule itself. Now, one of the other things that I want to highlight on this section, though, for the contacts, is not only do we have the contacts and their contact information here in this section, there's also a little bit of additional information that we'll be keeping track of here on the Insurance and Certificates tab as well. Now, this one I want to highlight here because at this point, since we're talking about scheduling, it's usually a good idea to go ahead and make sure that we have full coverage for the guys that we're going to have working on our job types, or on our jobs today. So what this means is I want to make sure that everybody that I'm bringing up to my project to work with me on this project already has workman's comp and liability insurance. They're licensed to perform the jobs that I want them to perform. I've got them set up so that I've got them covered with their performance bonds, even if we have to do any kind of special training or security certification or anything like that. OSHA sometimes has these kind of things. And all of this can be gathered together here in the Insurance and Certificate section so that we can see what types they have, when they were issued, what sort of expirations we have coming up, or in this case, Holly doesn't actually have her coverage anymore, so we need to get that updated in this case. Now, of course, from here, you can always click into these sections, and this will take you directly to the area where you can put in another certificate for the contact just by clicking on their name. And adding in this information is just a matter of clicking the Add button to create the entry, and then going in here and plugging in the type of entry that we're working on. From here, there's some additional information like policy number and classification that you can fill in, of course. But the most important next piece here is the issue and expiration dates for this coverage. This is going to apply for insurance, for licensing, and for performance bonds, because this coverage span is how ConstructionSuite's scheduling system, OnPlan, knows who is a viable option for work. If this is somebody that doesn't have coverage when I'm trying to schedule them, ConstructionSuite is going to give me plenty of notification that, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea, and you perhaps want to hold off on actually using this person on the job because what are we going to do with him? He doesn't have any coverage, so it might not work out very well. So again, the idea here is make sure for those of you using Premiere, of course, and Catalyst and above, that you guys come into the insurance tracking section and you set up all of the detail that you can for these individuals and make sure that the expiration dates make sense. I fell into the trap of assigning Hollies to the same day, which is why it doesn't work anymore. But it's just that easy. You do this, and now all this information is going to show up back on the calendar that we have in ConstructionSuite as well. We took a brief look at this calendar on Monday, but let's go back and review it because there's a lot of wonderful tools that you'll actually have here on the calendar that you can work with very, very easily. So if you come and take a look at the calendar section here, this is going to give me an overview for all the different activities that we've got going on with the company right now. On the calendar itself, we have a month view up here at the top. There's a week view if you wanted to switch over to just see this week. I've got a day view in here as well. There's a list view, which is just going to outline everything that we have to do over a specific time frame. Most of my old projects have already been archived, so there's not much in this area. But you can always adjust your date filters here as well, just to bring in some additional tasks. There you go. And then, of course, we now have a year view available to you guys as well, which is a wonderful tool to go through and show you where you guys have started mapping out these projects that you're going to be working on and the density of these tasks as well. Typically, darker the dot, more that's going on. So you can see through here where we have a lot of the different detail and everything set up for all of our projects. Let's go to 2015. There we go, 2015, there it is. And so just taking a look through all of this information, of course you can see that the next few months we're going to be pretty busy. A little bit of a downtime there. But all of this information, again, is going to be available back on the other views here as well. I typically like to work off of the month view, though, because it just provides the most detail for me as I'm navigating through. Now, in addition to this, as you're looking through all of this information here in ConstructionSuite, let's make sure that we're in the right time frame here. There we go. There's a few different things that you guys will probably notice about these tasks that we're looking at. This is the beginning of July, of course, that we're looking through, so this is the month of July. And in July, I'm going to be working on a handful of different projects, and you can tell because each of these projects is going to be color-coded, which is a property, actually, that you can set up in the project itself. If you go to the project and you edit the project, on that info screen, the very first screen, there's a little drop box down at the bottom for the project color. And this is where it shows. So on here, of course, I've got one of my projects here with a very light blue color coding. The next one, of course, is going to be the green on here. Some of the tasks that aren't yet assigned to a project, like some of my lead callbacks that I have here for Al and Phil, these are just a generic color for ConstructionSuite, but as we navigate down a little bit further, you'll actually see some other colors in here as well. So fitting into the apparent Easter theme that I decided to go with, you'll actually see some of the information showing up like this. And color coding is just one of those kind of tools that we can use to help me navigate through these projects a little bit better. In addition to those color codings, though, you can always come up to the Tools menu, go to Options, and go to the Calendar options here and choose how the names of these tasks show up on the calendar as well. So you can set it up so that they show the subject and then the project name. This would be permits-gory remodel probably, or something like that. We could do subject-contact name. If you're juggling a lot of your own employees or subcontractors, this is a wonderful tool to use for that because you'll be able to see all of their names tagged to the tasks that they're working on as well. There's also the assigned users as well. So this kind of comes into play when we're looking at our own internal staff for managing the schedule. It'll have your initials on everything, basically, or your name attached to everything, so you'll know that you've got to keep up with that particular schedule while looking at all the schedules as a whole. Now, for some of you as well who do a lot of smaller tasks, tasks that maybe that are not all-day activities that you guys still need to share out with everybody else, we also give you an option to show the activity start time at the beginning of one of these tasks as well. So if we go with this magic set of abilities here, you'll actually see on some of these, perhaps, maybe not yet, but we've got the project names on them now. If I double-click to create a new activity here on July 15th, you can assign the activity type here. There's a % complete and everything like that. This one I don't want to have as an all-day event. I'm going to set this up for the meeting to be at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11 we'll say. And of course in this case, I'm going to pick the person that I wish to be speaking with in this case. Let's say it's Holly again. And my project, we can set up whatever we like here. Assigned resource, of course, that's going to be me. Did I check the box? I did not check the box. There we go. So here it is, and with this activity, of course, just like as you might create in Outlook or on your calendar on your phone or anything like that, you can put in a brief description for what we're going to be doing at this particular meeting. You can set some quick reminders down here at the bottom, which are usually maybe 10 or 20 minutes beforehand, a day or so ahead, a few days ahead maybe. something like that for the quick reminders. You can also come over to the Reminder tab, though, and get a little bit more detail in place for these as well, if you like. What I like about the Reminders tab, though, is this allows me to go through and actually send out notifications to the contact that I'm going to be meeting with, in this case, Holly. I can actually set this up so that Holly gets an email or a text message as a reminder prior to the meeting itself, so that she can set aside the time and make sure that it's valuable for both of us, rather than me showing up and then her having to leave after 10 minutes because she maybe has a follow-up meeting with somebody else, or she's got to, go take care of another job, or whatever it is. This just provides that additional reminder notification so that everybody is working together instead of conflicting schedules and all that kind of stuff. So of course, once we put this in and I click OK, I now have my meeting here with Holly. And of course, this is a 10 a.m. meeting, so I can see that now. And if we need to make any adjustments, we can just double click to open it back up again and make those changes here. Otherwise, the information is going to be there. It's going to handle all of the notifications and everything like that. And so myself and Holly will have all the opportunities in the world to meet up at 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, July 15th there. What's nice about this is also going to sync up this calendar activity to my ConstructionOnline account now as well. So in this case, because I've created this activity and it's assigned to a project that exists on ConstructionOnline, my calendar on my phone through on-site calendars is going to look the same as it does here in ConstructionSuite. Creating it here means it's in the palm of my hand whenever I take off and start driving around, or whatever it is that I'm going to be doing between now and July 15th. And that way it'll always keep me up to date there as well. Now, along those lines, same sort of thing holds true for the to-do list in ConstructionSuite. The to-do list, of course, is going to be focused a little bit more on tasks that I myself need to accomplish, or tasks that I want to assign out to somebody else. One of the examples for this is making sure that we have the new slideshow, maybe, for one of the webinars, so I could put that together, or reaching out and filling out all of the paperwork for permits on a particular project, maybe, or something like that. Something that may have a specific deadline, but it doesn't require a whole lot of people to coordinate their schedules and come together for this. These are the perfect kind of tasks for to-dos. This is the same sort of thing that most of us probably have hanging on our fridge at home, but in this case, most of these are going to be work-related, which might be a little bit different. And in this case, you can also assign them to projects. Same as before, you can assign related projects in here. You can put in your subject lines. And even put in related contacts and assigned resources and everything like that, same as before. This will also sync up to ConstructionOnline, so again, this one I can actually see on my phone. We can keep track of it there as well. And this also has a little bubble sort option up here at the top as well, so I can filter this list down to tasks that I have upcoming, tasks that are yet incomplete, or if I wanted to flip over and see all the overdue tasks, which right now is all of them because they should have been done by this morning, you'll see those there too. Now I'm going to clean this list up, it's both items. I'm going to clean it up a little bit so that I have some completed tasks instead. It's just a little bit nicer to actually have this information falling off of my overdue list. So we'll do that just to make sure that the system stays in order. And you'll actually see these items now checked off in the app as well, which fortunately I can't show you at the moment because I don't have it hooked up to the screen. But try this on your own as well. When you create some of these to-dos, as long as the project exists on ConstructionOnline or they're unassigned, this information will sync up to your online accounts, will show up on the mobile apps on your devices, and anything that you mark off of that list or your assigned users mark off of the list, it all carries back here to ConstructionSuite and shows as completed as well. Now I make the distinction too for the tasks that have to be on ConstructionOnline, because the ConstructionOnline syncing that happens here with ConstructionSuite and ConstructionOnline is a tool that's called SuiteLink, and it's not going to assume because you're creating content for a project that the project needs to be hosted yet. Ultimately, that's your decision, and when you're ready to push one of these up to ConstructionOnline, of course this is happening through the projects or project files. You can just right-click on one of these projects and shoot it up from there. Now I'm not going to get into that today. We'll save that one for a little bit of work tomorrow. We're going to be covering ConstructionOnline and all of the fun utility that we have there. For today, though, let's step back from the calendars and the to-do list and look instead at scheduling. Now, the scheduling tab is a wonderful place for you guys to go to set up scheduled templates for any of the projects that we have moving forward. These scheduled templates can be a variety of different things. You can set up simple scheduling templates if you guys are just going to be going out and building a deck and it takes a week and a half or something like that. You can easily do that. There could be more complex schedules if you guys are doing whole home construction, or if you guys are doing renovations or remodeling projects, or building doctor's offices or dentist offices or something like that. These are easy options as well. And ultimately, I like the scheduled template option because what you can do with this template is you can open them up, you can edit the templates through the right-click menu, and it'll pull up all the detail for you with all the tasks already connected. You can predefine a lot of your reminder messages assigned to these tasks, and everything else is already done. All you have to do is go in here and set the project start date. So this is OnPlan, though. This is the scheduling system that we're looking at. And what you'll see here in the schedules in ConstructionSuite is we have task information over on the left side, and we've got the Gantt chart on the right. There's the Gantt chart. And now again, this is one of the templates that we're working with as well. So you'll probably see some tasks in here that may be inactive, kind of like my project liability or workman's compensation or something like that. These are tasks that I don't know if they're going to apply on every project, but generally speaking, you can set these tasks as active or inactive through the right-click menu. Where do we have it? There it is down here at the bottom, activate and deactivate tasks. We can turn it on again just by clicking activate, or right-click and deactivate the task again so that it doesn't impact the overall length of the schedule itself. Now along those lines too, you guys might notice that there's some additional options in the right-click menu, which I'll touch on in just a moment. But before I get to that, as a kind of a bigger priority, you've got some of these inactive tasks. There's also going to be things like groups and general tasks here in the schedule as well. Now a group it doesn't really have any details by itself. It's just a way of collecting up a bunch of tasks together and saying that this is all part of one trade or part of one phase or whatever it is that you guys want to organize. So you'll see groups in here that I have like planning, project insurance, job site facilities, foundation, and so on. And what I'm doing is I'm just collecting up all of these tasks that kind of fit the same mold and organizing under the group heading here, planning, the tasks, of course, being design services, permits, lot costs, and construction financing. And it serves two purposes. First, of course, over on the Gantt chart, you can see where I've got this group, this brace fixed out there, and this will give me an idea if there's one person that I have in charge of planning, then I'm going to probably need their attention throughout this entire period. So if we did any updates for the tasks, that group is going to be adjusted accordingly. And you'll always see that over here on the left. The start date and end date for groups is always being pulled by the tasks within it. So you can do that there as well. This also serves a purpose of giving me one heading that I can click to select all the tasks within the group. So if I wanted to move this group around, or if I needed to collapse it down and shift it, or copy and cut and paste, or anything like that, easy options to do that. And because I have these all grouped, I can actually move this around as one unit as well, just in case I need to adjust this portion on the Gantt chart, which can be done mostly by just dragging and dropping the tasks around, which is super nice and easy. So you'll have options like that with the groups, and of course the tasks themselves, this is when we're doing the work. So the tasks are going to have the start dates and the end dates, durations, and potentially predecessors as well. And most of this information you'll be setting up either in the template right now, or you can set it up later on once you get into the project itself. Now I'll touch on that one shortly, but just to give you an idea of some of the things that I like to set up in here, I've got average durations for these tasks. We can always adjust them at a later date. I typically start most of my projects around the first of the year just because we're going to be shifting the project start date anyway. Ultimately, don't worry too much about the start dates for the tasks, except in that you need to make sure that you link them to everything else. Now, as a rule of thumb, I am a humongous fan of linking everything to something. If it's possible that you can have two tasks tied together like I have down here, then by all means please do. And the reason for that is, if we mark all of these tasks as interrelated, like I have them down here in the body of the schedule itself, these predecessor relationships allow me to update my schedule, update the start dates for all of these tasks, by updating a single task rather than having to go through and update each individual item. And this will become plenty obvious if we take a look at design services. For example, if I needed to adjust some of my start dates or durations for these tasks, then it's all going to be a manual process. I have to go in and I have to say design services is now going to be 15 days, permits is going to be 4 days, and I have to manually set these things around and maybe drag and drop them around on the schedule as well because they're not related to one another. And again, it becomes a little bit tedious because you have to touch every single task to make sure that it's right. The difference is, if I come down here and adjust builder's risk insurance, if I think that it's going to take 2 days, the entire rest of the schedule is now going to update because I made one small little change on one small little task up here at the top. So predecessor relationships are immensely important because they save you just buckets of time in the long run. And setting these predecessors is all about task IDs. So you can see down here in the predecessor column that I actually have some of the predecessor relationships showing up now. And what we're looking at with these predecessors is here site work. I've got this one tied to the end of task ID 7. So out here to the left you'll see task number 7, and there's builder's risk insurance, and that's the relationship that I've built, and you can see that represented here by the arrow linking these two tasks. So then throughout, if we follow along with this logic, footer's labor is now going to be dependent on site work. That's my relationship here, the predecessor, there it is. And I'm buying the footer's materials around the same time, so it should have the same predecessor. And there it is. Task 19 as well. Now there are other options for these predecessors. Like here, for example, I've got footer's labor and footer's materials, but I know that my footer's materials need to show up when I'm beginning footer's labor, not necessarily at the end of site work, because something could delay my footer's labor, and that would be a different impact. So instead of using the same general predecessor ID, I'm actually going to tie these two tasks together using 20 as my predecessor in this case, except I want to create this as a start-to-start relationship, represented by SS. Now this means that footer's materials is always going to follow along with footer's labor and start at the same time. Those are now tied together so that they're always going to be beginning at the same time. Any delays to footer labor will cause delays to my material order or my material delivery as well. So you can go through and you'll find other places where I might want to do the same thing. Foundation materials, this needs to be related to foundation labor, start-to-start relationship again, and so on. But other things might be tied to the end of a task. So I might have two tasks that I always want to finish at the same time instead of two that are starting at the same time. If that's the case, of course, that's going to be a finish-to-finish relationship instead of a start-to-start relationship, and that, of course, is going to be represented here by FF, finish, as opposed to SS, which is start-start. You'll also be able to set up, in addition to different predecessor relationship types like the default, which is finish to start, or start to start or finish to finish or anything like that. Aside from those predecessor relationships, you can also do plus or minus so many days, just in case you want to go through and create a gap. So in this case, for example, I have concrete slab labor finishing up, and then I'm immediately doing my slab inspection. Sometimes this is good, sometimes not so good. If we wanted to give the concrete a little bit of time to set first, before doing that inspection, then all I have to do is come down here and say, let's give it an extra bonus day or two. And in that time, it's going to actually build in a little bit of wiggle room throughout the rest of the schedule, so that now the concrete might have a little bit of time to dry, but we can still get in there and take care of a couple of odds and ends or something like that if something comes up. So these are some of the possibilities that you guys have with predecessor relationships, and once you build this information together, you set up your groups and your tasks. All of the groups and tasks, by the way, can be added to through the right-click menu. You can just add a task or add a group in here as well if you need to. You'll also be able to move these items either up and down or in and out using the indent and outdent options here as well. All of this through the right-click menu. So these are some wonderful tools that you guys can use to set up some of these schedule templates in ConstructionSuite. But now let's shift over from the schedule templates to looking at another option for generating these as well. So of course this is a template, and if we're making changes to the template, you always want to save the template, close it down, and go from there. But in this case, let's say that this project that I'm working on, this gory remodel, let's say this is a bit of a special case. And in this case, I've got some odd items that I put onto the estimate, and they didn't exist in any of the schedule templates that I've created in the past, nor do I really have a good one to use as a framework. And in this case, we can actually take all of the information that I put together in this particular estimate and push it into a brand new schedule, right here in the estimate itself, under the File menu, there's a Create New Schedule button. Right there. Now I like this option as well because when you're creating a schedule from an estimate, you select the one option here in order to do it, just create a new schedule. And there's a few different selections that you can make for how much information we're going to pull over to this as well. So personally, I'm a big fan of having the pricing information go over to the schedule as well so that I can generate cash flow reports and things like that as well. In my case, though, I want to make sure that I prorate the company overhead margin in this case, just so that it's distributed evenly so that my cash flow, my incoming cash flow, is pretty legit. So I'm going to use this option to prorate my company overhead margin. And there's a few additional options that I'm not particularly interested in for the moment, but you guys might want to consider as well, like including some categories with no estimated value. If there's something that you guys know you're going to need to do, but you're not charging the client for it, go ahead and pull it over. You'll be able to pull those over too. You can include options and non-accepted change orders. You can include items in the schedule if you guys really want to get down to the nitty-gritty details. I don't. You can even set it up so that you're selecting just a single classification. So maybe all the labor from the estimate goes into the schedule so that you can generate just your labor schedule for that instead of having everything, including materials and equipment and everything like that as well. So pick the sweet spot for the schedule options that you want to use here, and when you click OK, it's going to create for me all the groups and tasks that I need for this schedule. So here it is, over here on the left. And what this one has done is this estimate had a schedule previously associated with it. If you look in the project itself, you'll actually see this old schedule in there. And now I've got a new schedule. Here it is. But what this means is it's going to attempt to predict what should show up in here. This is all coming from the estimate itself, all of my start dates and my durations. But of course, in this case, some of it's going to change. The information is going to change here. So at this point, same as with the template, now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start mapping out some of the better details. Design services, this typically takes a little bit longer. The architects aren't wizards. They can't finish the plans in a day, so we'll give them, let's say 7 days for that. Permits, that's okay. I can start that after they've started to get some of the plans together. Lot costs, after we have the building permits, that's what we're going to start to apply for these. So let's set a predecessor of task ID 3 to start building these relationships. And then of course for financing for the whole lot, yeah, I've already started paying for things, but in this case I'm just going to make sure that all the financing is in order once I have the lot to work on. Now, same as before, we can start going through and mapping out the rest of these tasks. Let's get rid of this foundation material through the right-click menu because that's way far out there and I don't want it to be. But under the site work section, now we can start actually getting into the meat of the schedule. So as we proceed through, I wait for construction financing and then we can do the site work. So I'm going to set this as task ID 7 and I'm going to give it a couple of days to make sure that I have my financing as well. Oh, not task ID number 7. Shame on me. That one should be task ID number 5 plus 2. There we go. Then we can build in some of the other relationships here as well. So I've got the site work set up there, and then I got footers labor and task ID 7. Link those together. Footers materials I want to start again at the same time as footers labor, so we'll go with task ID 8, and it's a start-to-start relationship. And after we do the footers, then we can go ahead and start to lay the foundation. So that's going to be task 10 is dependent on 8. And my footers materials, again, starting the same time as task 10, and so on. So you can see that it's going to start to build out the schedule. But one thing that you guys might not have caught yet is the dates on this are hopefully way off because the project didn't start back in 2013 as I originally had planned. Now it's going to be starting, let's say, in August of 2015. So in this case, I can start to map out all of my relationships and everything between the tasks. But from here, we can now go up to the project list, or the project tab rather, and shift the entire project back some months, I guess, at this point. So we can actually just shift this all the way back to 2015 when we're going to be starting in August of 2015, and let's say August 3rd. Seems pretty good. And there we go. So now with this one, starting on August 3rd, all of my dates and all of the relationships between these tasks have shifted back the exact same amount so that the basically timing and spacing on all of these tasks is exactly the same as it was when the schedule was set in 2013, but now this one's starting in 2015, which is a lot more realistic. You'll also notice, though, that some of the tasks might shift a little bit because now it has new weekend positions that it has to take into account, and holidays and things like that that may not have been in the exact same places before. And you'll actually see these represented here on the Gantt chart. Most of the weekends are going to be kind of grayed out a little bit, like they are here. Holidays are a little bit lighter as well. But you can always go in and adjust what your work days and your holidays look like under the Options menu here in the Projects tab as well. So when you open up Options, there's a full battery of things that you guys can look at. I mean, we've got things like showing baselines and showing completed activities and task names and all these different things on the Gantt chart. But what I want to focus on right now, first of all, is going over to the Workdays and Holidays tab. This is, well, first of all, this is set by the country that you're working out of. So for those of you guys working in the United States, your holiday list is probably going to be looking like this. For those of you who are not in the United States, when you first set up your information for the login or for the company information, that's going to determine what your holiday list really looks like. So make sure that you set that if you're looking at the wrong set of holidays, because that's where it's pulling from. Now, in addition to that, you'll see on here that we have a series of work days over here on the left-hand side. And then, of course, the holidays themselves. What we're looking at is what we're going to be observing amongst this entire set. So my work week here on the left, I'm going to check off all the boxes for the work days that we have going at any given time. So my work days right now, my work week is going to be Monday through Friday, and I know this is going to translate into 8 to 5 days. Everybody's working an 8-hour day, 5 days a week. Pretty simple. We've got a lot of clients out there, though, who prefer the 10-hour work days. So maybe you guys work Monday through Thursday, and your work day starts at 6, perhaps, or something like that. In which case, you could just uncheck Friday, and now Friday isn't going to be considered a working day on the calendar, or on the schedule, rather. So everything's going to get stretched out a little bit further. For those who might be a little bit of the opposite, maybe you need to add in a couple of extra days or something like that because you guys have a 6-day work week, or whatever it is. You can easily do that. Otherwise, just pick the work week that fits, pick the holidays that you're giving your guys off, and if there's anything in this list that we didn't catch, you can even come over to the Exceptions tab and put in additional working or non-working days in here as well. Now, for the non-working days, I tend to find that this is pretty dependent on your clients. Not too long ago, I was actually working with a couple of people up in New York, and they had one particular set of clients that they worked with in one of the buildings there. It was predominantly a Jewish community in that particular building, so of course they had to observe certain religious times and religious holidays and things like that as well. So they had to put in several exceptions as non-working days because they couldn't get into the building during those days. On the flip side, they had other working days that they could use as replacements. So they used this pretty heavily. They went back and forth and set these things up. So you can easily go through and add remove. When you click OK after making those adjustments, the schedule is going to automatically compress or expand depending on what kind of availability we have for these tasks. So that's an easy option in there as well. The rest of this, though, is going to be based off of the relationships that you're creating in there and the duration for the tasks and what you have mapped out on the schedule itself. And if you zoom out, you can even get a better kind of a bird's eye view throughout the entire schedule, just kind of scrolling through it from there. Maybe you zoom out a little bit further. Just be careful that you don't get yourself caught in the trap of zooming out to the point that you're looking at just a couple of years across the top, because then it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But for the rest of it, yeah, just pick the zoom bar that you guys prefer, and when you click on any of these tasks and kind of step through the schedule, you'll see that it's jumping to an appropriate time frame for you to take a look at that task. And just make sure that you map everything else over together as well. Now don't forget also that when you guys are taking a look at all of this information in the schedule itself, there are additional details that I've brought over because I created this particular schedule for my estimate. As an example, I've got pricing information over here on the Gantt chart. For that pricing information, this is going to be useful if I wanted to show this to my finance company or any of my investors. It's also going to be useful if we come up to the Reports tab and start generating something like a cash flow report or an earned value report. Cash flow, of course, this is all about projections, predictions. Earned value is a little bit more focused on how much have we done and how much should we have made for the work that we've done. So you can always work with a couple of those. But it might not be something that you want to show on the schedule when you guys are handing it off to the client. So here you can come to the View menu and go to Show Hide Columns, and this will bring up a little area where you can check off boxes for columns that you want to see over on the task information side, or check off the boxes over here for what you want to see on the Gantt chart side. So in this case, if we scroll down, we see Total Estimate as one of the boxes here that I can uncheck for the Gantt chart, and now it's not going to be visible to anybody. Along these lines, though, we might want to go through and add a couple of milestones to the project for payments that we're going to be requesting. So here, maybe if we finish with the foundation and I want to add in a task, which is going to be a 0-day task because it's a milestone. And this particular milestone is Request First Draw. There you go. This I now have as a milestone, which I can put wherever I need to on the schedule. And that'll show up as another one of these points here in the schedules as well. Now, of course, I'd still recommend doing the same thing. Go ahead and link this as a milestone into everything else. And along with this task, I'll want to set up some additional information on this task. Simple things like, well, for starters, I'm going to change the color of the milestone so that it's green. Of course, green, money, makes sense. So those are my favorite kind of tasks, of course. And in addition to that, I want to go ahead and set up a resource or assign this to one of my people in the office who's going to be putting together this application for payment, which we took a look at yesterday, or putting together the draw request. And so here we can go ahead and tag it into the person who's going to be taking care of that, whoever it might be. And under the Reminders tab, I can go ahead and set it up so that they get a reminder the day before to go ahead and put together that payment request form. If they need to request any other documentation, they certainly can, but here, let's say, don't forget to create the Afterpay. Like so. This now has the possibility of going out via email or text message to the people that I've assigned this particular reminder to. So you can just check the box for how you want that information to go out. And now, this contact is going to get a pop-up reminder, they're going to get an email notification, and that task is going to be following along with everything else that I'm working on as well. So in addition to that, obviously we're going to have people who are actually doing work and not just people who are going out there and requesting that we get paid. I wish it was all the latter, but unfortunately we do have to have some of the former to manage, and those guys are going to be showing up here in the schedule as well in the same exact way. For these tasks where you're assigning resources, you can right-click on the task and go to the Task Information tab. Under the Resources section, you'll actually see, in my case, these are people that are coming in synced over from the estimate itself, as that's how we created this schedule. But you'll also be able to add additional resources here as well. Now this tends to be a really handy little tool because as you're adding in the resources, the Scheduled Activities section over here on the bottom right-hand corner, this is showing me in the red where I've already assigned Abernathy Brothers to several different tasks. They're already working in the first week of September and they're near the beginning of November, it looks like. And if I can't remember what it is that I set them up to do, and I'm not sure if I can actually assign them to two things, you can actually click on this day and it'll show you what they're working on. Looks like they're really into drywall on that day, so maybe I shouldn't assign them to something else that day. But this isn't for that day, I don't believe. This one's for the middle of August, so let's go ahead and assign them anyway. Doesn't look like they're doing anything for me in August, so I'll click OK. And in this case, we're going to get one of those notifications about insurance information. Now, if you guys will remember, I only set up one or two pieces one or two certificates here in ConstructionSuite, so I'm not taking advantage yet of this certificate tracking system, and this is some of the results of that. Now, I can always say I know that all my guys are covered, so I can just click OK and ignore this. It's still a risky click, though, because if you don't know, if you don't have the system set up so that it's keeping track of the certificate information properly, then you're running based on hunches or guesses or something like that. You're not taking advantage of the full utility here that the program has to offer. So just take a brief moment to go back in and update Abernathy Brothers with the information that you quote-unquote know that you have on hand. This way, you'll also be helping out the people who follow along behind you if they're double-checking the schedule, or if somebody's trying to print out a listing for who's going to be working on the job. They will also know that this person is covered, and they'll be able to see that coverage whenever they go in there and double-check. So again, help the team here and put in the information there so that everybody knows what's required and nobody gets caught unaware. Now, of course, as you go through and you do this, same as before, all of this information is going to show up as available now on the task. You can show this information on the Gantt chart if you decide to show the resource names on the Gantt chart. You can even come in and start setting up some of these fun little reminders for them as well. Planning reminders typically default to the farthest out. These are almost 2-week reminders, 10 days out, but you can always go through and adjust the time frame here as well. If you wanted to make it longer or shorter, you certainly can. This is the message for the reminder itself, so if you guys want to put a little personal flair on these, by all means go ahead. Otherwise, click OK, or save rather, and that'll be in the system as well. Now, of course, as you're going through this, there's a lot of additional tools that we can take advantage of as well. We briefly touched on these earlier with the reports. I'm a huge fan of assigning resources and getting all this information out. I'm a huge fan of a lot of things, but this is just one more. With the resources, I can set up ConstructionSuite so that all this information is being passed out via email or text message, so I don't have to make as many phone calls. We can also do things like generating scheduled task reports so that I can print off everything that I'm doing or that I'm assigning to a specific individual and get them to do it. We've got some filter options here under the View menu which do similar things. We can filter it down to a specific time frame or to a specific resource or group of resources. But under the Reports tab, there's a few additional tools that we can use here too, like work orders and status reports and things like that, that are all built based off of the fact that we're assigning resources and putting in all of the information that we need for these tasks. The more information you put in, there's much more that you can get out of the system just by having the right details in place. And this is just some of the reports that you can generate with it. One of the other big ones, though, is going to be the baseline schedule report. So we're talking about setting up the schedule right now, and it has been my experience that setting up the schedule and trying to figure out exactly how the job is going to go is never the same at the end of the project. Your schedule is always going to change. There's going to be delays. There's going to be things that come up. Maybe it's just bad weather. We're located here in the south, in Alabama, so periodically hurricanes blow through. This is always going to cause delays on job sites, especially if we're working outdoors. And if something like that happens, rather than just coming into the schedule and just moving tasks around without keeping any history of that, I always recommend coming first to the Projects tab and setting a baseline for this schedule. Now, I haven't actually started work on this one, so my baseline in this case is probably going to be something along the lines of an initial start. And what this means is I'm taking a snapshot of the schedule so that if we do make delays on the schedule, let's say permits gets delayed significantly, you can see the impact for that delay across all the other tasks. Of course, in the system, you can have several baselines set up as well. And with multiple baselines in place, you can compare between baselines if you ever needed to, or you can turn on or off various different baselines, so you can show any given baselines that you guys create. And under the Reports tab, you can even generate a baseline schedule report, so you could compare the schedule as it stands now to the schedule as you guys originally predicted, just by selecting that as the baseline when we generate this baseline report. So if you have one of those jobs where the schedule just got jumbled all over the place and you guys have a client that's coming to you and asking why these delays are all happening, you could generate one of these reports, provide it for them and say, you know, this one small, what seemed like a small event in the beginning caused us to stretch back through the holiday season, and now here we are a month late on the project, even though it was a 2-day delay. It's also a wonderful tool for keeping them on task as well, because you could always adjust the tasks back based on a projected delay and then making selections or something like that, and say something along the lines of, hey, I need you to get these done on time. These selections have to be made when I ask you for them, because if you don't, you're going to be delaying the whole schedule by 2 weeks. So it's actually critical that you do this. Make sure that it gets done. And along those lines too, I mentioned critical. ConstructionSuite is going to be calculating your critical path as well. So just talking about those tasks that you have to pay closest attention to, ConstructionSuite is going to be highlighting the shortest path from the beginning of the job to the end of the job based on predecessor relationships, and it's going to highlight those for you in red. So that becomes your critical path, and you know, just looking at this, that a delay on any one of those tasks will actually push back the entire project start date by at least the same amount, if not more. So keep in mind that this is dependent on the predecessor relationships. Mine isn't highlighted at the moment because I've only got a handful of predecessors set up, so make sure that this is the number one thing that you do. If you guys are going through this process and you guys are setting up the schedules, predecessors are very important, not just for saving you time whenever you have to adjust anything on the schedule, but also for helping you to map out the things like the critical path and keeping everybody on task and things like that as well. So of course that's a lot of the reporting utility that you guys can see in there. Under the resources and the views menu, you guys have a lot of ways to break down this information that we've set up in the schedule and get some more meaningful information out of it. If you guys just wanted a quick cursory glance at the schedule, you can always collapse all the tasks to show just the groups, so that if you guys expand this or shrink it down a little bit, you can kind of see where all these different trades are going to be working. Expand it all back out again to get a little bit more information. Of course, we can set it up so that we're just showing milestones, or we're showing all activities or specific tasks or something like that. Of course, under the tools menu, like we saw before in the right click menu, you've got options in here to indent and outdent and move information around and everything like that as well. You can even go to today or jump around on the schedule if you guys need to from this section. You'll also find a couple of more fun tools as well out here on the right, like the chronological sort and compressing options for the schedule. Now, I mentioned this, chronological sort is a pretty obvious one, or at least once you actually see what it does, it's easy to understand. What the chronological sort is going to do for me, if I clicked on this button, it's going to take all the different groups that I have in the schedule and it's going to organize them based on their start dates. The one that starts first jumps up to the top, the next one next in line, and so on. And then it's going to do the same thing for all the tasks within those groups. So if I have one group that starts off on, here planning for example is August 3rd, that's going to jump to the top of the list because that's the first thing chronologically that we're going to be working on, and so on out throughout. I'm sure you guys understand that part. But the rest of the information in here is going to be displayed accordingly. And sometimes what you'll catch when doing something like a chronological sort, you'll actually notice that there's a few gaps in the schedule where there shouldn't be. And this is where compressing comes into play. Now, even if you guys go through and map out all the predecessor relationships throughout the entire schedule like I have here, that's not necessarily going to force every task to start at its earliest possible start date. As an example, I have, let's see if I actually have one that has a delay. I'll just create one real quick. So let's say footer's labor starts at a later date than I had originally anticipated. So yeah, I've got a gap in here for tasks that have happened now, and if this gap was unintentional, maybe I just shifted the start date back when I didn't need to or something like that, compressing the schedule will allow me to pull all of these tasks back up to the front to their earliest possible start date based on these predecessor relationships. Again, key point here is making sure that those predecessors are set up. If they're not, compressing the schedule doesn't really do a whole lot of good for us. If you do have all the predecessor relationships set up though, all you have to do is click one button and it will squeeze out all that extra time throughout the schedule so that you don't have wasted days where the job site is just sitting empty. Nobody's working on it. So compressing the schedule is certainly a wonderful utility to help out with that. You'll see that one here. There's some additional things that you can do with this as well. Compressing the schedule is all about squeezing out these times, but if you guys wanted to change some of the relationships, change how the tasks work together, then you can right-click on these tasks and go into the task information, and there's additional options in here to help out with that as well. Not just things like priorities and status, which will help out with a lot of the reports, but there's also a tool in here called ASAP, which is going to force this task to always start at the earliest possible start date. So if something happens, let's say to permits scoots back up in time, its subsequent tasks don't automatically move up in time because we don't know when we book the time for doing the lot costs or for the site work or anything like that. But if it's our own work crew, we can shift them around wherever we want because it's only going to affect us. We're not really messing with anybody else's schedule. So in this case, permits didn't cause lot costs to move up because I haven't compressed the schedule, I didn't set ASAP. In this case though, if I decided to move construction financing back, then site work is going to follow it back too, because I did set ASAP for site work. So if you guys are interested in that kind of relationship between your tasks, where everything is always going to start just as early as it possibly could, make sure that you set that ASAP feature as well. Now, there are some things that that's not going to conflict with. As an example, I mentioned booking time with a subcontractor or something like that, and if you want to respect their schedules a little bit more, you can always right-click on Footer's Labor, go into the task information for this guy, and set up some constraints for this task instead. If I talk to my guys who are going to be coming out and doing the footers, and they say we can do this task or we can do this work for you guys, but we have to start after September 10th, maybe. That's the earliest that they could possibly start. And we have to be absolutely finished for this task by September 28th, then that becomes the set of constraints that you're setting up for the task. Now, if we try to move this task around a little bit, it's not going to allow me to push this outside of its scheduled time frame for that constraint. You'll see that it's got a little lock icon representing to me that I can't actually shift this outside of that window because I know that that's the only window that my footers guys can come out and do the job. So keep that in mind as well. If you guys are interested, use that constraints option, and it'll help you guys plan out your schedules a little bit more. And of course, this is all about planning the information. You guys have plenty of options for not just mapping out the project, but also taking this and setting up email reminders and text message and notifications and everything like that. But better still, you can actually take this schedule when you're finished and you like what you see, go to the Construction Suite tab and publish it straight on up to ConstructionOnline. At this point, you're taking all the work that we've set up for this project and mapping out and juggling all the resources and everything like that. You're making it available to everybody who needs it online, and at that point, they can log in through ClientLink or TeamLink to see how the project is progressing and when they need to show up. They'll also be getting GamePlan notifications, hopefully from ConstructionOnline as well, which outline all the calendar activities you've assigned to them, to-dos, punch list items, scheduled events, scheduled tasks. All of that comes together in GamePlan from ConstructionOnline. So if you publish this up there, you're going to be feeding into this automatic notification system that makes sure that everybody is showing up on your job sites when you want them to. And it's a whole lot better than hiring like a co-op or something like that and giving them a call list to get in touch with every day to make sure that people are showing up. Or an intern, or whatever it is that you guys might want for that. So the system can handle most of this itself, and it's all because you have this option here to publish to ConstructionOnline. So take advantage of that if you have it, because you're literally pushing the information out that everybody needs, you're making it accessible to them, and you're removing any possibility for them to not know. You're giving it all to them, you're putting it in their hands, and they can run with it. And along those same lines, when we save the information, of course, it's also going to be feeding back into my Construction Suite calendar as well. Yep. And this you will see back here. So this was the Gory project, so I've just basically updated some of these down here. But of course, as you go through and you update a lot of these tasks, you'll see the information showing up now on the calendar a little bit different as well. So there they are. It's also important to note, though, as you guys are looking through this information, that the details for the calendar activities and everything like that that you guys are working on, the only thing that's going to be showing up here in the schedule, or on the calendar rather, is the information that's part of the primary schedule for the job. So if we go back and take a look at the Gory Remodel project, you'll notice now that I have two schedules, but only one of them has the little green dot indicating primary. On the Project Files tab, same sort of idea, except in this case it's a little check mark. So the check mark or the green dot indicates that this is the primary schedule, and that's the only one that's going to be sending out reminders and notifications. It's the only one that pops up on my calendar, and it's the only one that I really need to follow along with at any given point as well. So important to make sure that you keep track of that. Although you can have several old copies, and I like the option of having old copies, there's only one that's going to be feeding into the calendars and one that's going to keep everybody notified as well. So make sure that you use it there. So, of course, this is actually going to wrap up most of the information that we have to share with you today. If you do have additional questions or there's anything else that you guys would like me to take a look at, I'm happy to. We'll be sticking around for about another 10 minutes or so, typically, to answer any outlasting or outliers on the question set. So if you guys do have questions, take a look at that GoToWebinar panel, pull up that questions section, and go ahead and push those over to me really quickly. Otherwise, for the rest of you guys, I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Once again, this is Ian Schaefer with UDA Technologies. If anything does come up and you guys need some additional help, by all means, give us a call or shoot us an email. You can find the contact information right here in ConstructionSuite. It's all right here if you need it, so reach out to us at any time. Otherwise, this is Ian with UDA Technologies. This has been our OnPlan scheduling webinar, and thank you so much for joining me, guys. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.